Revenge films.
I have one older sister. She's currently back at our parents' house with her 2 kids, living what you'd call a boomerang life. Meanwhile, I work and live alone in a nearby apartment. One day my brother-in-law contacted me. He's currently in the middle of a messy divorce with my sister, and apparently he wants her to pay him alimony. But he can't reach her directly, and whenever he goes to our parents' house, my parents turn him away. So he contacted me instead. I asked my brother-in-law, why should my sister pay alimony? And his response was absolutely ridiculous. First, he claimed my sister stopped making his meals and taking care of him. According to him, this was unacceptable behavior for a wife. Even though it was her fault, she was the one who left, saying she wanted a divorce. So naturally, she should pay alimony. By the way, when my sister came back home, she properly explained the situation and why they were fighting. I was absolutely stunned by what she told me. My brother-in-law had been laid off from his company a year ago. After that, he couldn't find full-time work, so he reluctantly took part-time jobs working from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Meanwhile, my sister worked full-time from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., and she was doing all the childcare for their 2 kids. Even though my brother-in-law had plenty of time in the mornings, he would sleep in until the last minute and never helped with the kids' breakfast or getting them ready for kindergarten. Also, since my sister had always handled all the housework, my brother-in-law refused to help with childcare, housework, or cleaning even after becoming a part-timer, saying there was no reason to change things now. As a result, my sister would wake up at 5 a.m., clean the house, make breakfast, and handle all the preparation for getting the kids ready by herself. Of course, she asked my brother-in-law to help, but he said,
"Picking up and dropping off kids? There are only moms there. I'd be embarrassed."
So he refused to budge. Still, my sister would make breakfast for my brother-in-law every morning, just like she did for the kids. But apparently my brother-in-law would barely touch his food and leave most of it untouched. Since that was wasteful and my sister wanted to save every minute she could in the morning, she didn't want to make it anymore. One day when she asked him why he kept leaving food, he gave her another ridiculous response, saying,
"My brain doesn't work in the morning. If you cut everything into bite-sized pieces to make it easy to eat, I might actually eat it. Besides, as a wife, you should do that without being asked, right? If I'm leaving food, that means there's something wrong with you. You should be able to figure that out yourself."
My sister was already exhausted from dealing with the kids, housework, and childcare every day. She couldn't possibly take care of a grown man-child on top of that. That's when her patience finally snapped and she came back home. Yet my brother-in-law insists that she failed in her role as a wife, so paying alimony is only natural. I'd already heard this from my sister, but hearing it again was utterly exasperating. So I told my brother-in-law that I'd heard my sister's side and I couldn't see any fault on her part. In fact, she had every reason to divorce him. Then my brother-in-law said that since my parents turn him away whenever he goes to their house and he can't talk to them, I should take responsibility as my sister's family member and pay the alimony instead. It made absolutely no sense. Anyway, I decided it was a waste of time dealing with this guy, so I hung up. But my brother-in-law must have thought it would be easier to get money from me than from my sister since my parents weren't around to protect me. From that day on, he started calling me every single day. I could have easily blocked his number, but I worried that if I did, he'd just go bother my sister again. So I couldn't quite bring myself to do it. I also thought about consulting with my sister about this, but knowing how much she worries, I figured she'd feel guilty about dragging me into this and might even offer to pay my brother-in-law the alimony, so I couldn't talk to her about this either. After ignoring my brother-in-law's calls for about a week, the constant calling suddenly stopped. I thought maybe he'd given up. Then one weekend, my doorbell rang. When I checked the intercom, my blood ran cold. My brother-in-law was standing at my door, grinning. "What are you doing here? Go away! I'm calling the police!" Then my brother-in-law smiled and said,
"Don't worry, I'm divorcing your sister now."
I thought, huh? He'd been saying he wouldn't divorce her until he got the alimony, so what changed? So I asked, "You're really divorcing her? What about the alimony?" And he said he didn't need it anymore. I felt suddenly relieved that my sister would be finally free from him, but the very next moment my brother-in-law said something shocking.
"Because I'm going to remarry to you, Michelle."
Huh? What are you talking about?
Wow, you work full-time at a major company, so you have a good income. And I saw on your Instagram that you're really good at cooking, right? So instead of your sister, if I marry you, I won't have to worry about money, and you'll do the housework and cooking too, right? So I figured it'd be okay to divorce her then.
Hearing his words, chills ran down my spine. I was filled with fear.
Actually, I couldn't pay rent and got an eviction notice. But we're going to live together from now on anyway, right? Don't worry, I can love you even though you're her sister.
Realizing how dangerous this was, I immediately called the police. Less than 10 minutes later, my brother-in-law was being held by both arms by the police. He was arguing with them, insisting that he was my fiancé and that we were getting married. When they asked me, "Is that true?" I adamantly denied it and told them everything about the divorce dispute with my sister. As a result, my brother-in-law was taken away by the police. I realized I couldn't handle this alone anymore, so I contacted my parents too. When my sister arrived at my place, she said, "Oh, don't sacrifice yourself for me!" She cried, relieved I was safe, and hugged me. My parents were already furious about what happened with my sister, but now that my brother-in-law had invaded my life too and acted like a stalker demanding I marry him, they were absolutely livid. They summoned my brother-in-law's parents from far away. Then his parents and my brother-in-law, who had been temporarily released from police custody, came to our parents' house to apologize by bowing on their knees. My brother-in-law's parents said that what happened with my sister was already inexcusable, but now he'd harassed me, who was still single, with phone calls, demanded I marry him, and asked for alimony. They were truly sorry. They promised they would take responsibility for paying the alimony to both of us and would take my brother-in-law back to their rural hometown where he'd never bother us again. But my brother-in-law was still saying,
"Your sister was the one in the wrong, and coming to your house was a win-win situation."
But right then and there, his father punched him and said,
"You fool! What you did to this young woman is a crime! Have some shame!"
My brother-in-law was so shocked by his father's punch that he became docile after that, and he was forcibly taken away to the remote countryside. As for the alimony, my brother-in-law's father said he couldn't allow his son to cause us any more trouble, so he paid several $10,000 up front in full, which we really appreciated. Until the very end, my brother-in-law was complaining.
"My wife wouldn't take care of me, so why am I the bad guy?"
And to me,
"I said I'd marry you, what's your problem?"
But everything about him was wrong. Later, I heard through the grapevine what happened to my brother-in-law after he moved. Apparently, his parents made him pay back every cent of the alimony himself. They forcibly took him to a brutal parts factory deep in the mountains and made him work there. It's a place with no entertainment or escape, where all you can do is work endlessly. He'll be trapped there for years until his debt is paid off. Good riddance.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.